There is a plant that grows without soil. It floats on water, feeds on sunlight, and makes its own fertilizer from thin air. It produces more protein per acre than soybeans, more than eggs, more than almost any crop humans have ever cultivated. For over 1,000 years, farmers relied on it to feed people without chemicals, factories, or debt. And today, in much of the modern world, it is classified as a noxious weed. This plant performs a biological process that entire industries were built to replace. It pulls nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and converts it into fertilizer naturally, endlessly, and without pollution. Long before synthetic nitrogen reshaped global agriculture, this plant fed civilizations and restored exhausted soils. We did not stop using it because it stopped working. We stopped using it because something else became profitable. As industrial fertilizer spread, free solutions became inconvenient. Knowledge passed through generations was rebranded as outdated. A plant that could replace entire systems quietly became something to eliminate. This is the story of the floating plant that once fed empires and still doubles in size every few days. If understanding what was buried matters to you, subscribe to Nature Unearthed, because forgotten solutions only remain forgotten when no one remembers them. The plant looks deceptively simple: a thin green mat floating on still water, delicate fronds no larger than a fingernail spreading across the surface. At first glance, it resembles duckweed or algae, something ornamental, harmless, forgettable. But beneath those tiny leaves exists a partnership older than human agriculture. A relationship so precise that neither organism can survive without the other. The plant is called Azolla, the floating fern, and it does not work alone. Inside tiny pockets within each leaf lives a cyanobacterium called Azolla. This microscopic partner is not a visitor or a parasite. It is inherited. When Azolla reproduces, the bacteria passes directly into the next generation. Mother to daughter across millions of years, the partnership preserved in every cell. The fern provides shelter and sugar from photosynthesis. The bacteria provides something far more valuable. It pulls nitrogen from the air. Nitrogen makes up 78% of the atmosphere, but plants cannot use it in gaseous form. They need it converted into ammonia, nitrates, compounds their roots can absorb. For most of history, this conversion happens slowly through lightning strikes or gradually through soil bacteria. Farmers waited, they composted, they rotated crops, they spread manure and prayed for rain. But Azolla does not wait. The cyanobacteria inside its leaves splits nitrogen molecules apart and reassembles them into ammonia continuously, powered only by sunlight and water. The fern absorbs this nitrogen and grows. When the plant dies or is mixed into soil, that nitrogen is released, free fertilizer, endless, renewable, created from air. This is not a recent discovery. Farmers in East and Southeast Asia understood this partnership long before anyone could see bacteria under a microscope. They did not need laboratories to prove what their fields already showed them. Azolla worked. In the rice paddies of ancient China and Vietnam, farmers did not plant Azolla by accident. They cultivated it deliberately, nurturing the green mats alongside their rice crops with the care reserved for something essential. The practice was not folklore. It was agricultural engineering refined over centuries. The process was elegant. Before transplanting rice seedlings, farmers flooded their paddies and introduced Azolla. The fern spread rapidly across the water surface, forming a living blanket. As it grew, it fixed nitrogen from the air, storing it in the biomass. When the rice reached a certain height, farmers stirred the Azolla into the water, mixing it into the soil below. The fern decomposed quickly, releasing nitrogen exactly when the rice needed it most. No manure required. No guano shipments from distant islands. No mining of mineral deposits. The nitrogen came from the atmosphere, captured and delivered by a plant that asked for nothing but sunlight and water. Yields increased. Weeds were suppressed beneath the floating mat, denied light before they could establish. Pests avoided the thick green cover. The rice grew taller, healthier, more abundant. Farmers who mastered Azolla cultivation guarded their knowledge carefully, passing techniques through families like heirlooms. In some regions, festivals celebrated the appearance of Azolla in ponds, a sign that the growing season would be prosperous. This was not subsistence farming, scratching survival from poor soil. This was agricultural sophistication that sustained empires. The Tang dynasty, the Khmer civilization, the kingdoms of Southeast Asia, all relied on rice production amplified by nitrogen that cost nothing and came from air. And the system worked for over 1,000 years. Modern researchers finally quantified what ancient farmers already knew. Azolla fixes nitrogen at rates that surpass most legumes. A single Azolla colony can double its biomass every 2 to 3 days under optimal conditions. In 1 week, it can cover an entire pond. In 2 weeks, it produces more organic material than most green manures generate in a month. The protein content is extraordinary. Fresh Azolla contains 25 to 35% protein by dry weight, comparable to soybeans at 40%. But soybeans require land, planting, weeding, and months to mature. Azolla requires a shallow depression filled with water. It grows without soil, without fertilizer input, without human labor beyond occasional harvesting. 1 acre of Azolla-covered water produces 4 to 6 tons of protein annually, continuously, indefinitely, and it achieves this using only sunlight, water, and air. No irrigation systems pumping groundwater, no chemical amendments, no tractors burning diesel. The inputs are free. The outputs are continuous. The system sustains itself. Researchers have measured Azolla fixing up to 60 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year, more than enough to replace synthetic fertilizers for rice cultivation. When mixed into soil, it decomposes within days, releasing nitrogen in forms plants absorb immediately. The decomposition is so rapid that farmers can incorporate Azolla and transplant rice within the same week. This is not marginal improvement. This is a complete replacement for industrial nitrogen, grown on site, requiring no supply chain, no factories, no fossil fuel inputs. So why did it disappear? In 1909, 2 German chemists, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, solved a problem that had haunted agriculture for decades. They invented a process to synthesize ammonia from atmospheric nitrogen using high pressure, high temperature, and a catalyst. For the first time in history, nitrogen fertilizer could be manufactured at industrial scale. The Haber-Bosch process saved millions from starvation. It allowed crops to be grown on depleted soils without waiting for nature's slow nutrient cycles. Food production exploded. Populations grew. The 20th century became possible because nitrogen, once scarce, became abundant. But abundance came with infrastructure: factories, supply chains, capital investment, companies, and companies require customers. After World War II, and the same factories that produced explosives retooled for agriculture, ammonium nitrate, developed for bombs, became fertilizer. Governments subsidized its use. Agricultural extension programs promoted it. Universities researched it. Within a generation, synthetic nitrogen became the foundation of modern farming, not because biological systems failed, but because industrial systems scaled. Azolla could not scale the same way. You cannot sell Azolla in branded bags. You cannot patent a fern that reproduces from fragments. You cannot build a distribution network for something farmers grow themselves. There was no profit model, and without profit, there was no promotion. Agricultural advisors stopped mentioning it. Universities redirected research funding toward optimizing chemical inputs. Extension services taught farmers to measure soil nitrogen and apply synthetic amendments, not to cultivate living nitrogen factories in their paddies. Traditional practices were rebranded as outdated, inefficient, incompatible with modern yield. The language shifted. Azolla was no longer a resource. It became an invasive species, a noxious weed, something to eliminate rather than cultivate. In the United States and Europe, it was classified as problematic, capable of choking waterways if uncontrolled. The fact that it had been controlled for 1,000 years in Asia did not matter. The new narrative took hold. Within 1 generation, knowledge vanished. Farmers who once cultivated Azolla deliberately now saw it as a nuisance. Garden centers stopped stocking it. Seed catalogs dropped it. Mentions disappeared from agricultural textbooks. So a plant that had fed civilizations became a footnote, then a warning, then nothing at all. This was not conspiracy. This was not malicious suppression. This was economics. A system that produces free fertility cannot coexist with an industry built on selling nitrogen. One model decentralizes control, the other centralizes it, and centralized systems have marketing budgets, political influence, and infrastructure. Decentralized systems have neither. Azolla did not fail. It became irrelevant to the people who decide what gets planted. The cost of that replacement is now visible everywhere. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizer revolutionized agriculture, but it also transformed ecosystems in ways no one predicted. Excess nitrogen runs off fields into rivers. Those rivers carry it to lakes and oceans. When nitrogen concentrations spike, and algae blooms explode, consuming oxygen as they die and decompose. Fish suffocate, ecosystems collapse, dead zones form. The Gulf of Mexico has one, the Baltic Sea has one, Lake Erie has one. Over 400 coastal dead zones exist worldwide, many linked directly to fertilizer runoff. Nitrogen also escapes into the atmosphere as nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Fertilizer production and use account for roughly 1.8% of global emissions. The Haber-Bosch process itself consumes 1 to 2% of the world's energy supply, burning natural gas to create the pressure and heat needed to synthesize ammonia. Soil structure degrades under continuous chemical fertilization. Organic matter declines. Microbial diversity collapses. Farmers apply more fertilizer each year to achieve the same yields, trapped in a cycle of dependency that drains bank accounts and poisons watersheds. And the cost keeps rising. Fertilizer prices spiked 300% between 2020 and 2022, driven by energy costs and supply chain disruptions. Farmers worldwide faced a choice: pay unprecedented prices or watch yields collapse. The system that promised abundance now holds farms hostage. The floating plant did none of this. It did not pollute rivers. It did not emit greenhouse gases. It did not degrade soil. It did not require farmers to purchase inputs or depend on supply chains. It simply grew, fixed nitrogen, and decomposed, cycling nutrients the way ecosystems have for millions of years. And it still works. Nothing about Azolla's biology has changed. In parts of Asia, smallholder farmers never stopped using it. In Vietnam, the rice paddies still incorporate Azolla during certain seasons, maintaining techniques refined over centuries. Research stations in the Philippines and India study it quietly, documenting yields and nitrogen fixation rates that match or exceed historical records. Backyard gardeners in the West have rediscovered it, cultivating Azolla in shallow ponds and kiddie pools to fertilize vegetable gardens. The plant spreads as it always has, doubling every few days, providing free nitrogen for tomatoes, peppers, and greens. Permaculture enthusiasts trade it like contraband, mailing plastic bags of wet Azolla across state lines because commercial sources no longer exist. Universities are beginning to revisit it. Studies on closed-loop aquaculture systems show Azolla absorbing excess nutrients from fish tanks while producing high-protein feed. New researchers explore its potential for bioremediation, removing nitrogen from polluted water while generating biomass. Climate scientists study the Azolla event, a moment 49 million years ago when massive Azolla blooms in the Arctic Ocean sequestered so much carbon that global temperatures dropped by several degrees. The plant that was discarded is proving relevant again, not because it evolved or improved, but because the problems it solves never went away. Nitrogen pollution, fertilizer dependency, soil degradation, rising input costs. Azolla addresses all of them, the same way it addressed them 1,000 years ago. The return is quiet, inevitable, not driven by policy or promotion, but by the simple math of biology. Free nitrogen will always outcompete purchased nitrogen when farmers have access to both. It never disappeared. Well, not really. Azolla still floats on ponds across Asia, thrives in aquariums, spreads in ditches where no one bothers to eradicate it. The cyanobacteria still split nitrogen molecules. The partnership still functions. The biology did not change. We did. We built a system that requires purchasing what nature provides for free. We created supply chains to replace symbiosis. We industrialized a process that a floating fern performs using only sunlight and air. And we convinced ourselves that the industrial version was progress. But the plant remembers. Farmers who never stopped using it remember. The soil remembers. Nitrogen fixation does not require factories. It requires partnership. And partnerships, once established, endure. Azolla is not extinct. It is not even rare. It is waiting in backyard ponds, research stations, and rice paddies, doing what it has always done, providing fertility without extraction, abundance without cost. The question is not whether Azolla works. The question is whether we remember that it does. If understanding what was buried matters to you, subscribe to Nature Unearthed, because the most powerful answers are often the ones we learned first.